Today we took over the ITE seminar slot to talk about this 5-minute thesis competition that we are launching. So I'll spend some time today talking about it with you. I'll introduce the competition rules, eligibility. We'll go through some examples of thesis competition submissions, just in case you haven't seen this before. And then of course I'll go through FAQs. I've already received some questions after I hinted at this back in December. So I'll address those questions and also talk about how you're scored and some dates coming up as well. So this is the one-pager that lovely RB in the back made for us, and you'll likely see this printed around as we're advertising for submissions for this competition. So as you can see, it says launching January 2024. Both master's and doctoral level students are eligible. In 5 minutes or less, you're going to convey the essence of your thesis to a panel of judges using a presentation. Now, it is an online submission. This is not a live thesis presentation. It will be a video recording. You'll submit it, and then we'll have the panel view the video recordings at their own time, of course, like sitting together in a group. So I think that's a good way for us to approach it this year because, of course, you're really, really busy. So you probably don't have the time to come out and give your presentations. And second, the video submission gives you flexibility on how you'd like to present it. And you'll see what I mean by that when we look at the examples as well. And as you can see, you probably didn't miss the cash prizes. So I'll go through that. But yes, we are offering cash prizes for this. First place gets $500, second place $350, and third place $200. So we thought a good way to give out cash would be, like what we get from you is like a good sort of snippet of what your research is that we can then portray to a layman audience and also get your name out there in a productive manner, right? Something that can be shared on social media is always great for you and then great for us. I think it's a win-win situation. All right, so let's get into this. So this is a unique opportunity, again, for yourselves to showcase your research to a wider audience across disciplines within the university. The reason why we say across disciplines is because this is open to anyone doing any research that has any mobility implications. You do not have to be specifically from the transportation sector here at UT, which most of you are, which is wonderful. But again, the call will be open to everyone. We'll be circulating this university-wide. This is made possible by the generous financial contribution of Alex Aritza, who's the manager of Intelligent Systems at IBI Group. So who is Alex? This is Alex here. Alex is actually a former alum of ENSHA in the infra option from 2009. And then Alex achieved their Master of Applied Science in Civil Engineering in 2011. They were supervised by Matt Ruda, so honestly, one of you, one of us, Alex is from here. And they have over 10 years of transportation engineering experience, spanning software systems planning, design, deployment, traffic management, center operations, special event logistics and operations, and field data collection. So when Alex made a financial contribution to Mobility Network, Judy and I had a meeting and said, what would you like to see? This 5-minute thesis competition then was a product of some of the innovation. And most recently, when advancement, so Nadia and I spoke with Alex was very excited about this idea, very excited that we're not only opening this to people in the transportation sector, but excited to see the implications of these theses on layman terms, so on things that people are doing in their everyday lives. So when I spoke to Alex last, Alex said, I'm so excited to be at the awards ceremony because they're invited, and to hear what the research is about without having to Google terms and subjects. Because Alex is well proficient in this field, and Alex is also out there, right, in their position, they understand that there is value to having a social media presence. If you're Googling Alex, they have a website, okay? They're big on Instagram and Twitter, which I didn't even know up until a few weeks ago. And they say, if we're promoting for students, grad students, people in our space, to make a presence for themselves, Alex is completely on board. So only made possible because of Alex Aritza, really. All the credit goes to them. And they'll be happy to see the winners at the awards ceremony. Okay, let's talk about eligibility. So you must be registered in a grad program, which applies to all of you who are here. At the time of the competition, you must have made some progress on research and analysis. Now, this again is very open-ended. Of course, if you're just starting out your research, that's completely fine. But it must be around mobility or mobility-related implications. It can't be totally about something else, like cardiovascular health. Like that has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about. If you have cardiovascular health that is related to XYZ, you can relate it to mobility, sure, but of course they want it to be related to our themes. I must represent the primary research that
walking improves your cardiovascular health.
Yeah, there you go. You can find the connection there. So you must be available for the award ceremony, either virtually or in person, of course, just because we'd like to appreciate and honor the people who put time into it. And agree to be video recorded and photographed so we can obviously get this published by U of T News and also on our website. You must allow the video recordings and photographs to be made public, again, because we will be uploading these things. It must be submitted via our form that will be made available next week, not just yet. And then you must also attend 2 out of 3 prep workshops to be eligible for this competition, and today actually counts as one of those workshops. So all of you have 1 out of 3 down, and the rest of the 14 people that didn't show up, they'll have to be at the next 2. So you've already got an advantage here. So some rules, it's 1 PowerPoint slide with voiceover is permitted. I know this might seem a little daunting just looking at it, but I promise there are examples that I'll show you that did use the 1 slide, and they did it effectively as well. The slide is to be presented from the beginning of the oration and remain in view for the duration of the video. Their presentations are limited to 5 minutes maximum, and competitors exceeding 5 minutes will be disqualified. Now, 5 minutes I know seems like a little bit less, but actually this thesis competition is known for being a 3-minute thesis competition, and we've extended it to 5 because we know just how much goes into the research in our space, so we gave you a little bit more time. So as a presenter, you must be in view at some point in the presentation. You don't need to be there the entire time. And I'm referring to the examples that I'll show you again. Some of the examples have the presenter in view the entire time and some don't. That's up to your personal preference. But we just like to see you in it so that if you do win and you get the credits and your video is uploaded, it's nice to have a face to the name of the winners. So presentations are to be spoken in standard oratory prose. So again, no poems, rap songs, although very creative. For the purposes of this, we just like it to be very standard sort of speech. And then this decision of the adjudicating panel will be final. So after the submissions in April, in mid-May we'll have a panel, depending on who has submit their videos. We will then look at what supervisors are involved in, etc., to make sure there isn't conflict of interest, just like we've done in the past with our fellowships and scholarships. We create the panel, then the panel views the videos, makes decisions based on a scoring rubric, which I'll also show you. And then in mid-May, we'll announce the winners, and in June, we'll have the award ceremony. But I'll go through that as well. So again, for the awards, 3 cash prizes. First place will receive $500, second place will receive $350, and third place will receive $200. And this will all be at the award ceremony in June. So workshops that I mentioned previously, we'll offer 3 sessions in prep of the submissions for this competition. So workshop 1 is today, really the launch and the FAQs and the lunch. Workshop number 2 is communicating your research in 5 minutes or less. So we'll help you be concise. If you bring some topics or ideas about the research that you're conducting or what you're working on, we can help you then turn this into some sort of really draft script that you can work on to then record yourself with. Workshop number 3, we will actually bring in our camera. We finally know how to use it, and we got it a year later. We're very excited to record for you or help you and upload your presentation. And we actually have a work study student, Taryn Deep, who has done video editing before, and we'll show you how to edit your video. We can help you out. We'll run a workshop on that there. So hopefully within the 3 workshops, you're actually able to just work on your submission and get it done by the 3rd one. And then of course, whatever finishing touches you'd like to do at the end. Did you have a question? Okay. So again, we're in Jan 2024, workshop number 1. The second workshop is in February, and I'll be communicating the details about that. The third one will be in March about creating the thesis presentation, and then our award ceremony will be in June. But again, so between April and May is when the submissions will be due, and then the submissions will be evaluated. So then award ceremony will happen in June, in our mobility month, just as we had last year. So do you have any questions before I go through some examples? There are a couple of videos that we'll watch. Yes?
Can I present some past research that is done right now?
Yes, exactly, you can. So it's open-ended. I know the rules technically say must be done during the duration of your grad study, but as long as it's yourself who's doing that research, it's completely fine. Okay, so I'll do this for you. Okay, so let's watch this. Oh. Sorry. Or maybe it's this one? Or maybe it's neither?
What are you supposed
Oh,
to
there we go, there we go. There we go.
Hi, my name is Chita, and I have a question for you. Have you ever experienced the feeling of frustration when you were stuck in traffic and then got late to work or some other place where you were supposed to be? Well, if the answer is yes, then it's not surprising. As a recent traffic report suggested, that you might be spending roughly 50 hours in a day just being stuck in traffic. Now imagine spending this valuable time with your loved ones, learning a new skill, or simply enjoying 10 minutes of extra nap each morning. So, as a transport engineer, I often get this question, that don't we have desired tools and resources to address the condition properly? My answer to this question is, yes we do. However, right tools do not guarantee the right solution. It's how we utilize them that matters. The same is with our traffic management systems. Currently, the traffic management systems are reactive. That means we utilize our tools and resources to see if the condition exists on our routes. Then, if we observe the condition, we think of the ways in which it can be solved. Therefore, even with the most advanced technology in the future, we are still likely to face the same condition as what we are observing today. Addressing this problem, my research focuses on predicting when and where can the condition occur in the future. So how do I do this? It's a three-step process. First, I observe the vehicles at different intersections on the road. I then develop algorithms to convert these observations into meaningful individual claims. Don't worry, this information is anonymous to me, but it helps me understand when and where do people travel. Not only that, it also helps me understand which paths do people choose and consider under a given traffic condition. I aggregate this information for several individuals over a long period of time to make travel predictions. No, I don't use tarot cards to do so, but instead I develop my own mathematical model that can help me understand human behavior. This might be something like predicting whether an individual will choose a path with minimum distance, minimum time, or path that is most familiar to them. This research is therefore very useful to traffic managers, as they can predict the arrival of the vehicles at different intersections. They can then use this information to manage traffic signals or adjust road speeds so that the overall congestion of the network is minimized. By doing so, this research helps you in saving time, reducing cost of fuel, enhancing your road safety, but most importantly, reducing the frustration while traveling. Thank you.
Alright, so that was the first example. I tried to make that one really relevant to the people in our space. Yeah.
I was trying to the poster. I expected something much like more like a TRB poster, but that's
Yeah.
really like simple.
Yeah, honestly, and like when you'll see the other examples, they all actually use very simple posters. So I'm so glad that that's something you caught. Yeah.
Is that Melbourne by any chance?
Yeah, it is.
I wondered who's going to recognize it. Yeah.
Or Melbourne, I should say.
That's so
You
funny.
don't pronounce the R in Melbourne.
And this is only 3 minutes instead of the 5, so you even have more time.
I love his shirt. I
Yes.
predict the future.
Right? Smart use of space. He knew he'd be visible in the video, so he used his shirt to be witty. But I like the fact that he was speaking very clearly. He took at least a minute to introduce the topic by relating it and asking questions. Like, do you feel frustrated? Don't you think that you would like to spend more time with your loved ones instead of in traffic? So not just relating to the engineers, but to anyone else who might watch this video. And then he went on to explain what he does and how he does it. And he did talk about his mathematical model, but he didn't get into the terms too much, where we were lost in the nitty-gritty of it. He kept it pretty high level to then explain what outcomes that he's looking for. Now, a lot of this was relevant to you because a lot of you are studying this or researching this, but I'd like to show you another example that isn't as relevant in terms of topic, but is still a great thesis nonetheless, thesis presentation. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so just before he starts using stem cells to model and treat cardiovascular disease, it's okay. I know we don't know too much about this. Maybe you do. I don't.
The cardiovascular system is truly unused. We may not think about it, but our hearts are beating constantly, delivering oxygen and nutrients throughout our bodies. Blood exits the heart through our largest blood vessel, the aorta. In healthy individuals, the aorta is elastic. When the heart beats, it ejects vast amounts of blood at enormously high pressure. Similar to a rubber band, the aorta stretches to contain the sudden rush of energy and then relaxes, evenly distributing blood throughout our bodies. In a condition called supravalvular aortic stenosis, or SVAS, affecting 1 in 10,000 people, the situation is not so simple. In SVAS, this elasticity is missing. There is no working rubber band. Instead, to deal with these enormous pressure changes on the heart, the smooth muscle cells of the aorta grow uncontrollably. Thinking if we make the wall thicker, it will be strong, it won't crack. Unfortunately, this causes the aorta to become narrower, ultimately making it harder for the heart to deliver enough nutrition to the body. Eventually, this stressful process causes the heart to shut down, and sadly, there is currently no cure for this condition. In my research, I studied the differences between cells that make up a healthy aorta from those of a person with SVAS. Now, I can't easily obtain cells directly from an aorta, as this would essentially require open heart surgery. However, using a technique called induced pluripotency, I can instead take a small sample of skin cells and transform them into stem cells, which can then be directed to become any type of cell in the body. Imagine a stem cell is like a seed of untapped potential. Depending on how you cultivate its growth and when and which nutrients you provide, it can become something as hardy as a beet or something as beautiful as an orchid. That might sound crazy, but here's how it's done. Simply by adding a series of factors that are highly abundant in developing embryos, I can convert those skin cells to a stem cell-like state. I can then cultivate these stem cells with specific nutrients to transform them into smooth muscle cells that have the same DNA and characteristics as those taken directly from an aorta. No open heart surgery required. Using the stem cell model, I've been able to effectively study and directly test therapies on SVAS smooth muscle cells. In SVAS cells, the machinery that helps cells sense stress doesn't work properly, causing them to misfuse for the heart and grow inappropriately. I have discovered a compound that gives SVAS cells the blueprints to synthesize new rubber band-like structures that can restore that stress-sensing capability. I have shown that SVAS cells treated with this drug begin to behave similarly to healthy cells, and I'm hopeful that my rescue experiments will help treat patients with this condition in not too distant future. And as stem cells can become any type of cell, I can use them to study a multitude of diseases, including cancer, even COVID-19, and directly test therapies on any organ system, in any individual, including you, and including me.
Okay, so that was the
Fortunately, it's my best.
second example. Any thoughts about that one? So as you saw, there was, again, just the one slide, and the slide was broken up into 3 different parts. But Matthew Ellis used a lot of hand gestures in his presentation, and as you saw in the beginning, again, sort of introduced the concept, the topic, and then talked about maybe some problem, addressed the problem, and then talked about, okay, there is a solution, but what am I doing in my research about that solution, right? What have I looked at? And then talks about, what has he developed or what is he working on, what are the outcomes of his research? And the real world sort of examples that he was giving time and time again, that this is like a rubber band, or I can also have implications for COVID-19 or cancer. A lot of these words, of course, they're relevant to his research, but they're very intentional that he's using because he'd like to relate to not just, again, the very niche audience. He'd like to sort of attract an audience that is bigger than that. So when all of us who have not gone to Yale nor are we working on any of this, we're able to then understand what his research is and sort of be impressed by the implications of his research and understand its importance, right? Because of the way that he worded it. So you might have noticed now that both of those presenters sort of took the same approach where they went from big idea and then narrowed it down to their research and what they're really talking about. They didn't go into the nitty-gritty. Yeah.
I like how he mentioned open heart surgery because people know A, that's complicated, and B, it sounds intense.
Exactly.
And so it got people to understand, like, hey, the reason why we need to model it with modifying a skin cell in the stem cell process, and a simple explanation, okay, change the nutrients, etc. Explaining, well, yeah, because I'm not exactly going to be able to cut my mom to take out her heart.
Exactly. And then he related back to that at the end where he's like, no open heart surgery required, right? So yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the examples given were wonderful, and also the expression and tone of the voice, like giving sort of emphasis to what he's trying, his point to come across, and then using his hands to give sort of a demonstration because he can't physically point to his poster. Hope you guys also noticed that. So both of those presenters, they had a video of themselves, and then they just input like a screenshot of their poster on top of the video, which is something we can show you how to do. It's just called overlaying video, very, very easy. Or you can choose to have your poster next to you. There is another example that I'll show you as well. Sorry, yeah.
It's also interesting, it seems that he's at a more advanced stage in his research than the other one, because
Yeah.
the first one just seemed to have what he's planning to do, and he seems to have what he's already done.
Right.
So I guess anyone can do it.
Exactly. So they were both from different competitions, and they both were winners in their own respective competitions. But absolutely right. So Matthew here I believe he was a postdoc, whereas Vivek was a PhD student. So yeah, there is a difference in where they were in their research. Great. So I have one more example. Oh, no, I think I didn't open the last one.
Have you ever witnessed a disaster in your life? 6 years ago, a major earthquake struck my hometown. As a structural engineer, I served in inspection team to perform door-to-door damage assessment. We took almost 10 days to investigate the damage to the whole city so that the government can distribute the resources to citizens for better recovery. Imagine that we had to collect data, take pictures, things like almost collect things. Believe me, that process was pretty dangerous and very time consuming. With this motivation, I decided to research how can I use new technologies to improve the current practice of damage assessment. My research aims to speed up the process of damage assessment without risking the life of first responders. How can I achieve this? I adopt drones, and artificial intelligence AI to assist in human-based damage assessment. After disasters, investigators can immediately find drones into the disaster-affected areas and just take pictures and take videos in the drone without seeing the in person. At the same time, they can use mine develop artificial intelligence algorithm to automatically detect the damage units and classify the damage level in real time. I collected many drone videos from different disasters, including hurricanes, tornadoes, and earthquakes, to further enhance the model performance. It's amazing that my model can achieve almost 70% accuracy, which is very close to the human expert performance at 73%. My AI model also has one very interesting feature. It tends to focus on the root condition of buildings to determine the overall damage level after hurricane. This particular behavior is exactly the same as human expert performing door-to-door damage assessment, because usually roofs suffer more after strong wind compared to other components of buildings. Overall, this work provides the same option for decision makers. For example, TA, Texas Division of Emergency Management, to obtain damage information in a timely manner after disasters. Also, this work can improve post-disaster evacuation for citizens like all of us. This is particularly important for people who need urgent help from the government. Last but not least, because of this work, first responders now don't have to put their lives in danger in order to fulfill their duties. Now, let me come back to the question in the beginning. Have you ever witnessed a disaster in your life? As disasters happen, my research will help you find how disasters affect your neighborhood without risking your life going outside of your geography. Thank you.
Okay, so this was his slide. Now, any thoughts, comments on this presentation? Now, mind you, this presentation was live, and he had a screen behind him, and he only showed this presentation in the beginning and at the end, this slide. So any thoughts about that approach?
So it violates one of your requirements.
Exactly, yeah.
So if the judge wants to be a complete like, how to say it,
Nitpicker.
a nitpicker, then, you know,
Yeah.
disqualification for that. On the other hand, I honestly am not sure if I needed him to use the slide. And this slide doesn't show me, to be honest, the process, because like I doubt it's looking like, I doubt the drone's gonna look like that and fly at that altitude. I'm sorry, I just don't believe that.
Yeah.
You know, it was more, I was actually pretty clear from his description of like, well, like he was on this damage inspection teams and the risk and time involved in going into semi-collapsed buildings. Now, this gives me a nice picture of, you're trying to walk inside of that structure. Do you need your head examined? I'm like, this is one of those like, I might not make it home life, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a little intense. So I guess understands, but I could honestly see why you wouldn't do
Sorry, she's gone and now I look crazy. I was let down.
well, I could honestly see why you wouldn't do any visual at all.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. So thanks for pointing that out, because Jishan actually was a runner-up, didn't win on this technicality. And so the judges then invited him to the final award ceremony to then still present, because they said that, you know, if it wasn't part of our rules that you needed the slide there for the entire oration, we, like, you know, you would have a great chance. Because as we saw, his presentation was still great. It was a story, had a beginning, middle, and end. He showed his research. There was a problem and offered. But just because of the slide issue, he didn't win any of the awards in the top 3. But they still gave him that opportunity to present because he put so much time and effort into it.
Because
So I thought,
it's really well done.
yeah,
And
I agree.
And it would be hard to pull that off, because even the way he used gestures to explain like the process, the time involvement, tying things together at the end, repeating things in the right places. Like he went back to, at the end he was talking about how you could like use a drone and to assess it in real time. He brought back how instead of your engineering inspection teams having to physically go into unstable structures to inspect them visually and take photos, the drone would do that. Well, if the drone gets destroyed, $10,000 bill, no dead bodies.
Right, absolutely. And I feel like in this one, he used a slide to show pictures instead of actually show a process.
Yeah.
Or a train of thought about the research or about how to display the research. Whereas the other two that we saw, the slide was divided into at least 2 or 3 different sections to then show like a flow of thinking on how the information is being presented. Whereas this one was just a supplement of his story or his dictation, and we didn't really need it, nor did it provide any sort of support to what he's speaking about, other than the fact that we can visualize what he's talking about, which we're already doing with the imagery.
Did he talk about how he classifies things as 3 or 4 or something else?
No, right? I don't think he
I
did.
think there was a hole there about
Yeah.
like know-how.
Mm-hmm.
Put a drone up, put a drone up, right?
Yeah.
That's not really, like, you're not gonna get a degree for that around here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Well,
You
I
have
think
to do something with that video data to come up with.
Yes.
I think part of that might have to do with you're trying to make this for a level of general audience. And just like that cardiovascular presentation, I doubt Yale would give him a degree for that.
No,
You know what I mean?
and it was clear behind his work that there was a lot of science, right? And the first guy's like, well, I used a mathematical model, and maybe that's enough to say, right? But in this one, it's not even really clear there's any science in there,
Yeah.
right? So I think, to me, this one is pretty light. His presentation was great, and the work may be great, but not teasing out a little bit of how do I come up with these assessments without getting into the nitty-gritty, right? I think that's the balance there you're looking for somehow.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm using really sophisticated things to do this, and it's really important. What I'm doing is important, and it takes some very special knowledge that I have to apply, and the outcomes are good or promising. But you have to persuade people in that middle bit that you did something special here.
Right.
Right? So I think that was missing there.
I agree. And
And it was
also,
done very well in the second one, where it's like, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
And yet I appreciated what he done.
Yeah.
It's almost easier to watch when you don't even understand.
yes, exactly.
Because you say, well, okay, if I met you at a party, I would say, wow.
Yeah. And then you remember, right? Because they're
Yeah.
giving those examples. So wonderful. Awesome. So we're just going to take a little bit of time to address some FAQs, probably things that you're thinking about as well. So how will the presentations be evaluated? A rubric is already created for the adjudicating panel. Competitors will be provided with an overall score out of 14. So as you can see here, there is like a little bit of a scheme here. From 1 to 7, you'll be scored based on categories that I will show you. And I know 1 to 3 look a little bit daunting. Don't worry, no one's really mean. Most of the submissions will likely score between the 4 to 7 range. So 4 being good, but some flaws, 5 very good, very minor flaws, 6 being excellent, almost flawless, and a 7 meaning that it's outstanding with no flaws. I don't really expect most people to score between 1 to 3. This is what they use universally, really, for most thesis competitions. It's a very similar scoring card. So we'll look at comprehension and content. So does the presentation provide a clear background and significance to the research question? Does the presentation provide clear positionality of the presenter to the research and research approach? Now if you think of the first 2 examples that we saw, we can say yes, we knew the exact position that both of the researchers held. Even for the third one, we knew the position that he held as well. Does the presentation clearly describe the research strategy or design and the result or findings of the research? And then does it clearly describe the conclusions, outcomes, and impact of the research as well? That'll be a score out of 7. Well, we're also looking at engagement and communication. Is it clear, the oration? Is the language appropriate for a non-specialist audience? Very easy to get, full grades on that. Is the PowerPoint slide well defined and does it enhance the presentation? So that's an important note because in the first 2, I'll argue that I do think that like the first one, I didn't really look at the map too clearly. The second cardiovascular one, I do think it enhanced the presentation because as he spoke, I was able to follow along. The third example that we saw, I would argue that it did not enhance the presentation, so likely would lose marks there. Being well defined as well, just as Judy mentioned, there were zones in the picture, but the zones were never mentioned in the presentation. So I wouldn't say that the slide itself was well defined or enhanced in the third example that we saw. And then the final one, does the presenter convey enthusiasm for the research and capture and maintain the audience's attention? Definitely for the first 2, I agree that there was enthusiasm there and they maintained the audience's attention. For the third example that we saw, there is enthusiasm and did capture the audience attention for myself, but maintain, I'd say, is difficult because that slide was missing. There was no enhanced slide for me to then follow along. So that's where you'll see the marking scheme is coming from. You'll get an overall score out of 14 and then comments as well. Now whether you are successful or unsuccessful, everyone will be provided with this because all of the submissions, if of course they are less than the 5 minutes, they're not disqualified, then they'll all be looked at. And every submission will have comments. So if you're not successful, you'll be receiving it just so that you have it as well. Okay? So everyone will have one of these score sheets. Yes?
Is there any incentive if you go like, well, under the time, like if you're under 3 minutes, but you don't compromise anything, is there like an incentive for that, like shorter, better, or not?
I mean, no, in terms of scoring, no. It could be that you explain it really well in 3.5 minutes and you could be a winner. But in terms of scoring, it wouldn't harm you in any way nor benefit you in any way. So it's up to you. Yeah. Right? Okay, so when will the submission form open for this competition? It'll open next week, so by next Friday it'll open. But again, we're not expecting to have submissions just yet, just to maybe walk you through the submission process and the questions during our next workshop. And submissions will be accepted until April 30th, 2024, after which we will then close the form and create our panel and then view the submissions. Can the submission have a length of less than 5 minutes, which you just addressed? Yes. As long as it does not exceed the 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes is totally fine. You saw the score sheet, there's no docking for anything less than 5 minutes. Can we do a voiceover of just our PowerPoint slide? If we refer back to the rules, the submission requires a view of the presenter at some point during the video. That being said, voiceover is permitted as long as we see you at some point. We can again help you do that. There are ways to have yourself there for a second, but if you think about it logistically, might not be the best aesthetic video out there, but again, it is your preference, it's up to you, we're here to support the decision that you make. When will the award winners be announced? In mid-May 2024. The award ceremony in June 2024. So all 3 winners will be expected to be in attendance, either in person or virtually, as a condition of receiving the cash prize. Yeah.
Sorry, very random. Just
No, of course.
to confirm, having yourself in the slide doesn't count as you appearing at some point.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good question. I should probably add that. So imagine you have a slide with just a picture of you, and then voiceover.
You can't just put your head
Because it's very hard for us to gauge the expression or enthusiasm without your face being present, at least for a little bit of it. If then you want to focus on a slide or use a cursor or whatnot, that's okay, but I'd recommend maybe following one of the approaches that we've seen, or
Well, it was nice seeing the guys' gestures.
Yes.
It made up for the fact that, like, at the end of the day, you've got one slide, you don't have a heck of a lot of canvas, so you add another canvas by, flailing all over the place.
Exactly. And the emphasis in your tone and your voice and your speech is made more evident when you're in view, right? It's a little bit harder to just have the audio and then imagine what your expression might have been, or how much emphasis you're putting on it just by listening to your voice, okay? So who will be on the panel? Again, this will be decided after the final submission date of April 30th. Likely faculty from our space, but again, that is something to be discussed after we know who and from what departments who is submitting. Okay. So, any other questions before?
I would probably comment on what Jack said, is if you look back at the scoring criteria, like shorter than 5 minutes, that's not mentioned at all. But when you decide whether you're going to be visible in your video or less visible, see how that might be impacted in this engagement and communications, right?
Yes.
So, and I think that's just something to think about, right? Your choice. But yeah, I think we were all taken by their delivery. I like this one a lot. Right? They're thoughtful. They had thought it through. That wasn't all spontaneous. That was well thought through. But it worked.
And the very first one that we saw, he was actually reading off a script. So I was reading like the YouTube comments. So there was people actually asking him, like, how did you memorize all that? And he said, I didn't. I was reading a script. It was right in front of him, next to the camera, so it looked like he's looking right into the camera. So again, you can use all of these methods, right? Totally up to your comfort. But there definitely is value, I think, in being seen throughout the duration of the video. So that's really it for this session, just a launch and some FAQs, and on Feb 23rd we'll have the second workshop where you can bring your paper materials, notes, anything that you're thinking about, and we'll help you draft a script and communicate to like a public audience, so we can work through with you on what things should look like, maybe what you should discuss, talk about bigger picture and then narrowing it down. So I'll break down the format that we saw in these examples, and we can help you build that story. We'll also look at a couple more examples that are more relevant to this space, and then again, very different from this space, to see what we like and don't like. So today was just an introduction to it, but I have a lot more examples lined up. And the March and April other dates will be announced as some time goes on, so that I can get the right bookings for the space, so you don't have to be here all the time. But thank you so much for joining. Lunch should be here shortly, and then we can all eat in the back. Great. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Great.